I transmigrated into a cannon fodder in a Mary Sue novel and met a tragic end. To survive, I decided to cling tightly to the protagonist's shoe's thigh. Me. You're an Omega, and I'm an Omega too. Why don't we be friends? Andrew curled his lips. Sure. Later, when I suddenly entered a heat period and asked Andrew to bring me inhibitors, he tore off my suppressant patch and whispered, Baby, you smell so good when I woke up. I found myself transmigrated into the novel as the cannon fodder love rival someone who repeatedly tried to sabotage the protagonist and Drew in pursuit of James, and my ending a miserable death on their wedding day. To make matters worse, this cannon fodder character had the same name as me, was also an Omega, and even looked exactly like me for the sake of my own life. I swore to keep my distance from James and seize every opportunity to get on Andrew's good side. Andrew was the sole heir of Philip's group with a handsome, refined face and an air of nobility. His presence was distant and cold, making him seem untouchable. And me, just one of James's many simping followers. The worst part, I was the type who actively dug my own grave. I climbed down from the top bunk, grabbed an inhibitor patch from my desk, and pressed it against my neck. Then I looked up at my roommate, who was busy playing a game. Do you know what Andrew likes? My roommate had been in the same club as Andrew during freshman year. Hearing my question, he took off his headphones. You mean that young master from Philip's group? I nodded. He patted my shoulder with a serious expression. Dan, I advise you to give up. Andrew isn't someone you can mess with. Back then, someone from our club tried to approach him and ended up getting scared to tears. I didn't care. No matter how dangerous he was, my survival came first. Just as I was contemplating how to win Andrew over, my stepmother called me. Come home this weekend. Your father is taking you to a business banquet. If your dear younger brother weren't busy, you wouldn't even get this opportunity. I quickly asked, will Philip's group be there? Her tone turned displeased. Don't get any ideas about the Phillips family. Do you even? Before she could finish insulting me, I hung up. In the novel, my mother passed away early, and my father remarried within 2 years. My younger half-brother, Jaden, was born when I was only 2. This was a rare chance to get close to Andrew. I had to take it. The banquet arrived as scheduled. I stood in a quiet corner, taking a sip from a glass of wine at the center of the room. Andrew was surrounded by flattery and admiration. Dressed in a sleek suit, he stood tall with striking features, his deep eyes carrying an unreadable chill. Despite the faint smile on his lips, there was always an underlying sense of aloofness. Since when did Omegas develop this well? We were both Omegas, so why do I look so much smaller than him? An Omega comparing himself to another Omega. I might as well just suffocate. As the guests gradually dispersed and network elsewhere, I saw my opportunity. After rejecting yet another admirer with a polite smile and Drew was finally alone, I took a deep breath and walked toward him. My name is Daniel Davis. I'm also a student at a university. I'm an Omega, and you're an Omega too. Why don't we be friends? At that moment, several people turned to look at us. Someone even murmured, Damn, is this how people flirt nowadays? That was smooth. Laughter followed, but as soon as Andrew shot them a cold glance, everyone fell silent and dispersed as if nothing had happened. Then he turned back to me. His deep eyes locked onto mine. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Omega friends. I nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, why not? Can we? Andrew lowered his gaze, his voice slow and deliberate. Of course, after all, we're both Omegas. Excitement surged in my chest. This was working. Just as I was about to continue buttering him up, I noticed another tall figure approaching. It was James. He walked straight to us and spoke to me. What are you doing here? A sense of doom settled in my gut before I transmigrated. The original owner of this body had already started pursuing James, writing love letters, sending homemade lunches, all of which ended up in the trash. My survival instinct screamed at me to leave. Time to retreat. I have something to do. So I'll be going now, I said, turning to flee. But before I could escape, Andrew grabbed the back of my collar, running away. But we just became friends. I blinked innocently. Andrew reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I don't have your contact yet. With no way out, I reluctantly scanned his QR code. They're done. Can I go now? Just then James blocked my way. Wait, did I say you could leave? Oh my God, why are they all treating me like a plaything? James narrowed his eyes. So after chasing me, you're now trying to get close to my friends. Doesn't that get exhausting? I blurted out. James scoffed. Don't play dumb. I've seen plenty like you. What the hell kind of love triangle drama is this? I absolutely can't let Andrew think I'm competing for an alpha. I looked at Andrew, my face full of flattery. I would never steal your man. I'm not chasing James anymore. Please don't be mad, okay? James froze. That's not what I meant. Wait a minute. We're both alphas before he could finish. And Drew, who had been pressing his lips into a firm line, let out a faint chuckle. All right, you said it yourself. After I left, James downed a glass of red wine and glanced at Andrew. What's up with Daniel Davis? Does he seriously not know that you're an alpha? And not just any alpha, but a top-tier one. Andrew didn't respond. A faint, unreadable smirk played on his lips. After a long pause, he watched my retreating figure and murmured, Interesting, leaving the banquet. I hummed a tune on my way back to campus. Everything was progressing smoothly. I could already see my bright future ahead, but just exchanging contact info wasn't enough. The fight wasn't over yet. To strengthen our OO bond, I decided to message Andrew and invite him out. Want to check out the new amusement park? I heard a lot of Omegas go there to take cute photos. Attach cute bear sticker. Unexpectedly, Andrew replied instantly. Sure, when I saw Andrew again, he was dressed nothing like his formal, sharp look from the banquet. He wore a black hoodie and joggers topped with a blue baseball jacket. The outfit made his broad shoulders and narrow waist stand out even more. His hair was slightly tousled by the wind, giving him an effortlessly youthful look. As he walked up beside me, he instantly drew countless stares. I couldn't help but grumble. Why is it that we're both megas, yet you developed so much better than me? Andrew leaned in close to my ear and whispered, Are you really that clueless, or just pretending? Pretending what? Seeing my utterly confused expression, Andrew sighed. You're hopeless. Noticing that his neck was bare, I frowned. You're the one who's hopeless. How could you forget your suppressant patch? I pulled a spare patch from my pocket, then down. Andrew raised an eyebrow, but complied, lowering his head slightly. As I pressed the patch against his gland, his body trembled slightly. A moment later, his earlobes flushed red. Then, in the next second, he gripped my wrist tightly. Has no one ever told you not to touch an alpha's glands so casually? I met his gaze, unbothered. Of course I know that. But you're an Omega, aren't you? His grip on my wrist tightened, sending a sharp pang of pain up my arm. Ow, you're hurting me. Seeing the red marks forming on my skin, Andrew finally let go. Then, to my surprise, I felt the warm touch on my wrist. Andrew was gently rubbing the sore spot. His voice was low and slightly hoarse. Such a delicate thing. Just then, a cotton candy vendor walked up to us. Sir, would you like to buy some cotton candy for your boyfriend? No doubt. He was talking to Andrew. I quickly waved my hands. Wait, you've got it wrong. We're not. Of course. I need to get one for my boyfriend. What flavor do you want? Andrew deliberately emphasized the word boyfriend. As he seriously picked out a cotton candy, my face grew hot and my heartbeat became impossible to control. A moment later, he handed me a rabbit-shaped cotton candy. I took a small bite and smiled. So sweet. The next second, Andrew leaned in and took a bite from the same spot. It really is sweet. Can Omegas be this flirty too? I can't handle this, but it didn't matter to Omegas had no future together. I teased. No wonder James likes you. If I were an alpha, I'd definitely pursue you too. Andrew suddenly halted mid-step. Who told you that James likes me, dude? You're the protagonist, shoo. If he doesn't like you, who else would he like? Why was he pretending not to know? I smiled mysteriously, patted his shoulder and said, Come on, you're an outstanding little Omega. Of course alphas would like you. Don't be so humble. Andrew stared at me and asked, Then do you like me? I didn't hesitate. Of course I do. The moment I finished speaking, Andrew's ears turned red and his gaze subtly shifted. Really? Da weary friends. Of course I like you. Andrew let out a helpless chuckle. One lace was something I couldn't quite decipher. At the end of the day, the Phillips family driver was already waiting at the amusement park exit. Before I got into the car, the driver suddenly spoke. Young master hasn't been this happy in a long time. You're the first Omega he's ever gone on a date with. Wait a second. Isn't this what the butler says in the novel? Doesn't this mean I'm his only friend? Victory was within reach. Naturally, I hitched a ride and sat in the backseat with Andrew. The driver drove steadily, and sleepiness overtook me. Without thinking, I leaned against Andrew's shoulder and dozed off. Half asleep, I muttered, "Your shoulder is so hard." A warm hand gently brushed through my hair drowsily. I heard him whisper, "You were the one who came to seduce me first. Don't regret it." When I woke up, I was safe and sound on my top bunk. I lifted the curtain and asked my already dressed roommate, "How did I get back?" He smirked as he laced up his shoes. "Andrew brought you back." "Damn, you really got him." I corrected him immediately. "What do you mean got him? We're just friends." My roommate chuckled. "Dan, let me give you some friendly advice. Don't play yourself." I stretched lastly. "Relax. I know what I'm doing." After washing up, I headed downstairs for breakfast. Today, the dorm hallway was unusually lively, filled with chatter. "Whose car is that at the entrance? It looks so cool." "That guy waiting by the car. Is he picking up his Omega? That Omega must be so lucky. I'm so jealous. Curious." I walked outside only to see James casually leaning against the car door, his gaze scanning the crowd. The moment his eyes landed on me, they brightened for a split second before he stood up straight. "Daniel, why haven't you come to see me these past few days?" James even looked a little disappointed. "Bro, you're the main alpha love interest. Could you not act so clingy?" I reminded him. "Didn't you already reject me? I'm just being smart and giving up." Hearing the word give up, James tensed up. "Wait, don't give up just yet. What if I change my mind and want to be with you? Scumbag trying to have your cake and eat it too. Poor Andrew, devoted to you with all his heart." I was just about to reject him again, but before I could speak, James wrapped his arms around me. The next second, I was yanked out of James' arms. My back was pressed tightly against a warm chest, and a cold breath brushed against my nape. Andrew's voice sounded in my ear. "You've been naughty and naughty kids need to be punished." Then he stepped in front of me and handed me a breakfast sandwich, his voice turning soft. "Go to class first." The naughty kid he was talking about had to be James, playing mediator. I patted Andrew's arm. "Don't fight, okay? It's normal to have conflicts in a relationship. Just communicate properly." I was practically their love life wingman at this point. Seriously, without me, how would these two even get together? Andrew nodded patiently and watched me leave. The moment I was out of sight, however, his gaze darkened as he turned back to James. "He still thinks you're an Omega." Andrew rubbed his temple impatiently, a mocking smile curling at his lips. His voice was cold. "Stop bothering Daniel." James wasn't about to back down. "He likes me." But before he could finish, his body was forced down by the overwhelming pressure of a top-tier alpha's pheromones. Andrew took his time lighting a cigarette, completely ignoring James' agony as he exhaled the lazy breath. "I know he's popular, but stay away from my Omega." James, now trembling under the weight of Andrew's pheromones, clenched his teeth. "Your Omega? He doesn't even know you're an alpha." The pain twisted his features. Andrew smiled faintly. "I'm just curious to see how much cure he can get, so don't say things you shouldn't in front of him." With that, he turned and walked away, his back straight and proud. His voice was a whisper, but it sent a chill down James' spine. It's time to teach this naughty kid a lesson, keeping James in check for Andrew's future. In the novel, James ended up choosing Andrew, but that didn't stop countless Omegas from throwing themselves at him. Now that Andrew and I were friends, it was only right that I helped him secure James' heart. That way they'd live happily ever after, and I wouldn't have to worry about James slicing me into pieces. As long as they didn't seat me next to a dog at their wedding banquet, I'd consider it a win. I laughed at the thought. My roommate, sitting beside me, noticed. "Dan, are you dating someone? You look way too happy." I quickly waved my hands. "No way. Don't talk nonsense." He changed the subject. "By the way, a new bar opened near campus. Want to check it out tonight?" I sighed, thinking about my abysmal alcohol tolerance. "I'll pass. I can't drink." "Come on, just come with me." I promise I'll look after you. Fine. Life was short, and a little fun wouldn't hurt. So after evening classes, we snuck out of campus. A bad decision at the bar. At the bar, I froze when I saw an Omega and an Alpha making out passionately at a nearby table. Flustered, I grabbed the drink on the table and took a sip. See no evil. See no evil. My roommate laughed. Dan, that's my drink. Your milk hasn't even arrived yet. Oh, sorry. I'll order another one for you. He waved it off. No worries. I just don't want you to get too drunk. That one's pretty strong, so let me know if you feel bad. I nodded. He got up and went to the dance floor. I only had one sip. It shouldn't be a problem. Yet in the next moment, a wave of dizziness hit me. Just then my phone rang. I struggled to pick it up. The caller ID. Big boss. Andrew. I answered sluggishly. Hello. Where are you? Why is it so noisy? Before my brain could process, my mouth moved first. A bar. A pause. So many people here. I giggled. I can even see the stars spinning. So fun. A cold voice came through the receiver. The bar. Daniel, you're really growing bold, he continued. Are you drunk? Nope, not at all. Rescued or kidnapped by Andrew. When Andrew arrived, I was already being pestered by a tall Alpha. One drink, or your contact number. Choose one. Choose your ass, who do you think you are? My head was spinning so much that I barely had the energy to argue. I waved him off, but he wouldn't budge. Scram. A cold voice cut through the air. The Alpha froze, then immediately backed away. I blinked up at Andrew, his sharp gaze locking onto me like a predator eyeing its prey. I shivered. The bar's air conditioning was on full blast, and my choice of shorts wasn't helping. I instinctively curled up. Andrew, dressed in a black trench coat over a crisp white shirt, exuded an air of restraint and control. He slipped off his coat and draped it over my shoulders. The scent of Satterwood enveloped me. His cologne smelled so good. I wanted to bury my face in it and take a few more deep breaths, but before I could, my body was suddenly lifted off the couch. Andrew had picked me up. I'm taking him. He was speaking to my roommate, wrapped in his warm embrace. I didn't even process the situation, just instinctively nuzzled closer. A quiet chuckle rumbled from his chest, still not behaving. Morning after the real problem. When I woke up, I was lying on the softest, most comfortable bed I'd ever slept in, and next to me was another person, Andrew. He was lying beside me. His voice was slow and deliberate. You're awake. I lifted my head to meet his gaze, forcing an awkward smile. Good morning. Andrew's expression remained unreadable. Since you're awake, let's have a little talk. I stiffened. About what? He leaned in slightly, his deep eyes locked onto mine. Let's talk about how you made me jealous. He was holding a grudge just because James hugged me. Petty. But before I could say anything, he suddenly pulled back the blanket. A large, warm hand trailed up my calf, then slid higher, stopping at the sensitive spot behind my knee. I jolted. Andrew's fingers, long and defined, alternated between light teasing and firm pressure, occasionally brushing against my waist. Wait, isn't this development moving a little too fast? Do you know what you did wrong? My most sensitive spot was completely under his control. I know. And GH stopped touching me. It tickles. But Andrew paid no attention. He continued, his voice low and unhurried. Then tell me, what did you do wrong? I tried my best to think. I shouldn't have had physical contact with James. Andrew's deep voice lingered in my ears. What else? My brain was already blank. What else? It was just a forced hug with James. What more could there be? I gave up. I don't know. It was too much. The sensation, the tickling. It was unbearable. I didn't even realize when a tear slipped from my eye. Only then did Andrew finally stop. I finally gathered enough strength to break free from his hold. His gaze was filled with possessiveness. How could you go to a bar without my permission? Did he forget who was being pinned down just now? Still feeling stubborn? I retorted, why do I need your permission to go to a bar? Andrew, as if completely innocent, suddenly looked at me with a wounded expression. Are we friends? Good friends should invite each other out, right? His eyes misted over as if brimming with unshed tears. Carried an unspoken accusation. If I refused him, I had a feeling those tears would spill. Left with no choice, I sighed. Fine. I'll invite you next time. Only then did Andrew seem satisfied, but his eyes never left me. His face was simply too good-looking. Our gazes met, and my heart pounded wildly, a little too popular for my own good. At the restaurant, we ordered our food. The Omega at the next table hesitated for a long time before finally mustering the courage to walk over. Standing next to Andrew, he shyly asked, "Can I add you on WeChat?" Andrew didn't even bother lifting his head. I spoke up before I could stop myself. "He's an Omega. Even if you add him, what's the point?" The Omega stiffened, then looked even more heartbroken. Before leaving, he gave me a look of betrayal. "You could have just said no. Did you have to humiliate me? I was innocent." Okay, the real culprit. Andrew merely watched in amusement, then from deep in his throat, he let out a low chuckle. How can someone be this adorable and dumb at the same time? If you don't know how to compliment people, just don't. Thanks. Campus gossip explosion. I rushed back to campus before dark. As soon as I unlocked my phone, countless messages popped up. "Dan, are you okay? If you're alive, send a 1. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have taken you to the bar. Shouldn't have let you drink something that's strong, and definitely shouldn't have stood by as Andrew took you away." Attached was a link to a forum post. Curious. I clicked on it. The first thing I saw was a photo of Andrew carrying me out of a hotel. The comment section was on fire. "The op is so bold for snapping a pic of Andrew. Good luck surviving." Wait, wasn't Daniel just chasing after James? That was fast. Is that really Andrew? Witnessing history. Andrew's first ever scandal with an Omega. The Phillips family's young master would never seriously be interested in Daniel. Probably just a fling. Am I the only one who thinks they look good together? Look good together. If it was Andrew, then maybe an OO romance wasn't so impossible. Before I could finish reading the comments, the post was deleted. The aftermath. Back at the dorm, my roommate jumped off his bed and grabbed me like a detective interrogating a suspect. "Dan, are you seriously okay?" "I'm fine. Andrew didn't do anything to you." "No, he didn't. Tickling doesn't count, right?" Thinking about it made my face burn. My roommate squinted. "Then why are you blushing?" I blurted out the first excuse I could think of. Maybe my heat period is coming soon. The real crisis Sunday. The sky was clear, but my head was foggy before heading out for a meal. My roommate asked, "Dan, want to come with?" I waved him off. "I'm not feeling great today. I'll pass." "All right. Take care of yourself." I collapsed back into bed. When I woke up again, it was already noon. My head was worse, and a familiar heat burned faintly at the nape of my neck. Shit, it's my heat. Period. I scrambled to find my suppressant. Empty. Double shit, the room was thick with the scent of my pheromones. Yuzu. Sweet and citrusy. Not wanting to trouble my roommate, I called Andrew. He picked up instantly. "What's wrong?" His deep, magnetic voice carried a hint of urgency. "Andrew, I don't feel good." There was a sharp pause on the other end. "Are you sick?" "It's my heat. I ran out of suppressants." "Can you bring me some?" Another pause. Then his voice, low and firm. "I'll be right there." Not the reaction I expected. Within 15 minutes, someone knocked on my dorm door. "Dan, it's me." "Open up." "It's unlocked." The second the words left my mouth, Andrew walked in and locked the door behind him. The scent of my pheromones immediately flooded the space. I stretched out my arm from under the blanket. "Give me the suppressant." Andrew didn't answer. His eyes were sharp and bloodshot, his breathing unsteady. Then he reached over and tore off my nearly ineffective suppressant patch. His warm breath ghosted over my nape. "Baby, you smell so good." The next second, a powerful ciderwood scent surged through the air. It was a top-tier alpha's pheromones. Andrew wasn't an Omega, he was an alpha. He pressed closer, inhaling deeply as if starving for my scent. The ciderwood fragrance engulfed me, shattering my already fragile self-control. I wanted more just when I thought I would lose myself completely. Andrew suddenly pulled back. Then he stabbed the suppressant into his own arm. As the effects kicked in, he gently stroked the back of my neck, his voice husky. "Dan, do you even realize what you're saying?" Dazed, I murmured, "I want you." Andrew smirked. "Baby, this might hurt a little." Then he pressed a new suppressant into my arm, his fingers brushing lightly over my skin. The haze in my mind slowly lifted, and our mingling pheromones began to fade. Sitting up, I finally processed everything. Andrew sat on a chair beside the bed, his tone unreadable. Feeling better, I snapped fully awake. Wait, hold on. You're an alpha. Andrew drummed his fingers against the desk, nodding lazily. You never asked. Andrew was a top-tier alpha. Memories of everything that had just happened to hit me like a truck. I was so screwed. Daniel, what have you done? I call the top-tier alpha an Omega. I try to set him up with another alpha. And now, I was sitting here staring at Andrew, whose deep eyes were locked onto mine. I quickly looked away. I really didn't know you were an alpha. Since you're an alpha, can we just pretend everything before was a joke? Andrew frowned slightly, but then responded without hesitation. No, his gaze didn't waver as he continued. Baby, you were the one who seduced me first. You've breathed in my pheromones and now you want to abandon me. What a heartless little Omega. Heaven knows, I did no such thing. I feebly protested. I didn't seduce you. Andrew remained at ease, rising slowly, as if he already had me in the palm of his hand. He walked over to my bed and gently caressed my cheek. Where his fingers brushed, my skin burned. Dan, I like the way you smell, and I like you. As soon as he spoke, my yuzu-scented pheromones spilled into the air. So you can't escape from me. The moment those words left his lips, I felt like I was sinking into a swamp. The air around me silent, except for the deafening thump of my own heartbeat. But just before I could fall deeper, Andrew pulled me back. Baby, keep your pheromones in check. I can't promise I'll hold back a second time. His heated gaze scorched me alive. Just as we locked eyes, his phone rang. President Phillips, there's a serious issue with the company. By the time I peeked out from under my blanket, Andrew had already ended the call, only to stray tufts of my hair stuck out. He sighed. Dan, just accept that you're my boyfriend now. Then, as if sealing the deal, he added, I ordered takeout for you. Eat properly, okay? The door clicked shut behind him. I finally crawled out from under the blanket and gasped for air. Accept what? Andrew likes me. He wants me to be his boyfriend. This was not in my survival plan. The school forum had exploded. Did Andrew just enter the Omega dorms? WTF? Isn't he an alpha? How is that allowed? Dude, he literally donated the entire dorm building. That's how I live in that dorm before he came. The dorm supervisor told us to put on proper clothes and act normal. Wait, isn't Daniel in that building? If that's the case, I'm officially shipping them. Y'all need to chill. The whole world knew Andrew was an alpha. How come no one told me this novel was about alphas? When my roommate got back, he immediately went for the gossip. The forum says Andrew came to our dorms. Is it true? I dodged the question. Did you know Andrew is an alpha? My roommate gave me a look. Who doesn't? He's literally the only top-tier alpha in the whole school. I was doomed. I requested leave from my counselor and ran home for 2 days. My younger brother, Jaden, was at home. The moment he saw me, he raised a brow. Why are you home? It's not even the weekend. I shrugged. Just tired. Thought I'd rest. His next words were completely devoid of politeness. Stay away from Andrew. Excuse me, Jaden crossed his arms. I saw your school's forum. Andrew's just playing with you. Don't get ahead of yourself. Jaden was also an Omega, but unlike me, he had a baby face and a sharp tongue inherited from his mother. Both of them treated me like a lifelong enemy. I smirked. If you have time to nag me, why don't you figure out a way to even meet Andrew first? His face darkened. You. I ignored him and headed upstairs. Behind me, I heard a loud crash in the living room. Jaden was throwing a tantrum. You just wait. I laughed as I closed my bedroom door. My little brother was so dumb. Once my heat period ended, Andrew had to represent the school in a finance competition. Only then did I feel safe enough to return to campus. When I walked into the dorm, my roommate was lounging on the couch, gaming, hearing me come in. He grinned. Yo, long time no see. Big bro. I opened my phone. New messages from Andrew. Big boss, baby. You have 2 days left. I won't be around, so wear your suppressant properly. Don't let other alphas get close. Be good and wait for me. My face instantly heated up. The tingling sensation spread through my entire body. It was just a few messages, Yet my brain completely short-circuited. At this point, I could no longer pretend my feelings for Andrew were innocent. At lunch, James sat next to me. "Daniel, do I really have no chance anymore?" I sighed and nodded. Then he dropped a bomb. "You probably don't know yet, but Andrew is getting engaged. His arranged marriage has already spread through the entire business world. The media will report it soon." I felt my chest tighten. James reached for my hand. I pulled away. "Dan, I don't want you to get hurt. Andrew isn't a good person." Then he stood up and left, leaving me stunned. My mind felt like a pile of burning embers cracking, breaking apart. An arranged marriage. The whole business world knew how come I didn't. Just then my phone rang. "Jaden, I told you not to get ahead of yourself." His tone was mocking. "Brother, no matter how badly you want to become a phoenix, you should at least check if someone actually wants you." Andrew really was getting engaged. Alphas were all the same. Top-tier alpha. More like top-tier scumbag. News of Andrew's engagement was officially announced. The school forum was on fire. What? Andrew was getting engaged. Damn, he's basically a child bride at this point. Told you. He was just playing around with Daniel. Wait, does this make Daniel the third party? Shouldn't we be curious about who he's engaged to? As a CP fan, I'll dream big and say it's Daniel. Bro, if they're real, I'll bet my life on it. My roommate patted my shoulder. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Bro, let's go watch the basketball game and clear your head. He just wanted me to stop overthinking. Even though I refused, he dragged me there anyway. At the game, a few alphas got into lifting their shirts to wipe sweat. My roommate grabbed my arm, excited. Damn, I had no idea the class rep had an 8-pack. Curious. I glanced over. Oh, yep, 8-pack confirmed. I looked down at my own flat but soft stomach. A deep sigh left my lips. Just then the cheering got louder. Andrew had just walked onto the court. As expected, he instantly became the center of attention. He raised his head, scanning the crowd. Then his gaze landed on me. His stare was intense, direct, burning. Scumbag alpha, and he still has the audacity to look at me. Dodging his gaze failed. I deliberately avoided Andrew's gaze. I kept my eyes down until the game ended. Just as I stood up to leave, a strong grip wrapped around my wrist. Dan, don't run from me. I'm not running. Meeting his eyes, I suddenly felt a surge of frustration. My throat tightened, my eyes stinging, Andrew's usual cold. Indifferent expression was instantly replaced with panic. He carefully cupped my face, voice laced with worry. Baby, what's wrong? I choked back my emotions. Alphas and Omegas should keep their distance. Since you're going to marry someone else, stop bothering me. Andrew's lips curled into a smirk. Jealous. Jealous. My ass the next second, he pulled me into his arms. You idiot. The person I'm marrying is you. It was always you. I froze. My heart clenched. But Andrew. Being Andrew immediately changed the subject. His jaw tensed. Did you like looking at someone else's ABS? He saw me counting the class rep's apps. My blush hadn't even faded from earlier. I frantically waved my hands. No, not at all. Andrew's brows relaxed slightly, but before I could explain further, he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward his car. His palm was warm, firm. I obediently followed. Once we got into the car, I finally asked, "Where are we going?" Andrew leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. Baby, isn't it a little late to ask that now? He drove us to his apartment. I had nowhere to escape. The moment the door shut, Andrew pinned me against the wall. The dim moonlight spilled through the window. The world felt still. Only the sound of our rapid heartbeats filled the silence. Andrew's breath was heavy, his voice husky. Be with me, okay? Ripples of emotions surged in my chest. Saying I wasn't moved would be a lie. I barely nodded so small. It was almost imperceptible, but he caught it. The next second I was lifted into the air. Andrew carried me to the bed. He took my hand and pressed it against his lower abdomen. Hot hard. His voice was low, commanding. No looking at anyone else's ABS. That's an order. And kids who break the rules get punished. My mind completely short-circuited. My eyes could only see him. Then I felt warm lips pressing against mine. A kiss deep, slow, intoxicating. Only when our breathing became uneven did Andrew reluctantly pull away. He nuzzled my nose, his long lashes trembling slightly. Our eyes met. His voice was soft, filled with unrestrained affection. Baby, I really like you. Dating a top-tier alpha requires scheduling. Going home. Must report to Andrew 3 days in advance. The moment I stepped through the door, my father was sitting on the couch reading the newspaper. I barely put down my backpack when my stepmother rushed up. Fake smile in place. Dan, you're back. You must be so tired from school. You've lost weight. I ignored her. I barely endured dinner, sending a quick message to Andrew under the table. Miss you attached cute bear sticker. It took him 5 minutes to reply. Hold on. Almost there. Almost where? The next second, the doorbell rang. Jaden, still holding his gaming console, groaned. Who the hell comes at this hour? Slowly, he dragged himself to open the door the moment he saw who it was. He froze. Then suddenly his face turned bright red. Andrew W., what are you doing here? I looked over. Andrew stood at the doorway, dressed in a sharp suit, long fingers carrying an obscene amount of expensive gifts. My father immediately stood up. President Phillips, what an honor. Please come in. At the dinner table, my stepmother and Jaden were full of enthusiasm, eager to please. Andrew, completely composed, spoke calmly. Uncle, I'm sure you've heard about my engagement. My father nodded. Yes, of course. Andrew's next words shattered the entire room. I'm here to discuss the details with you. 3 people, 3 different levels of shock. Jaden's face turned redder, and he even gave me a smug glance. My stepmother looked like she won the lottery. My father hesitated. Our Jaden is still young. You might have to wait till more years. Stepmother immediately interjected. Oh, but engagement can come first. Besides, Jaden is already an adult. Andrew squeezed my hand under the table. Then he looked my father straight in the eye and said, You're overthinking it. The person I want to marry is Dan. That night, the school forum blew up. Andrew finally responded to the engagement rumors. Andrew Phillips. Not a rumor. Attached was a photo of him carrying me out of the bar. The comment section went insane. OMG, I'm screaming. Bro Phillips is living the dream. Wait, so who's the engagement partner if you can't figure it out? Go take an IQ test. It's obviously Daniel. Who was that one person who bet their life that they weren't real? Where are you at? Andrew, and I gained an entire army of CP fans. Some people even started writing fan fiction. Explicit fan fiction. Curious. I accidentally clicked on one just as my face started burning. A deep husky voice sounded from behind me. Wife, what are you looking at? I panicked and tossed my phone aside. The next second, Andrew pinned me down. His voice was laced with amusement, yet dangerously firm. You want to try? It wasn't a question. Before I could even process, his lips crashed onto mine. The scent of ciderwood and yuzu intertwined thick in the air. Outside, the trees trembled violently under the force of a storm. Raindrops pelted against the glass, drowning out the sound of my gasps. The storm didn't stop until the dead of night. As exhaustion dragged me under, I whispered my final words. Andrew, you're a total maniac.